Hey guys, it's Bran, and today I'm bringing you a Master Yi top lane guide. Master Yi in the top lane is currently very strong because he's able to deal with some of the stronger tanks that are dominating the top lane. His diving ability and resets make him very strong, especially in low elo where you can abuse lack of peel and coordinated team fighting. He's extremely good for climbing elo because he doesn't need strong mechanics to deal damage, so you can focus on macro play, but practicing him can make you much better and his skill cap is actually extremely high. Having an in-depth knowledge of Yi can make low elo games an absolute joke. Yi does well in most team compositions, but try to pick him in a team where either your jungle or support have very good initiation tools. You don't have CC in your kit, and starting team fights as a Yi is a very bad idea. For the runes, you always want to run this page against pretty much every matchup. You want attack speed reds, armor yellows, 6 scaling CDR blues, and then 3 scaling MR runes, and finally attack speed quints. Master Yi synergizes very well with attack speed, because the more attacks you do, the faster your alpha strike resets and the more damage you do. We don't add any attack damage reds because Master Yi has more than enough damage when he uses his E early game, and our build involves very little attack speed, so the runes make up for it. The 10% CDR at level 18 becomes very useful, especially when we pair it with 30% CDR from our build, because it reduces Master Yi's ult cooldown to less than 50 seconds. But as you'll see, this cooldown actually becomes much less, and if you play Yi right, you will only have to wait about 8 seconds before ulting again. Remember that CDR is not important at all when it comes to Yi's basic abilities. We'll talk about why later. If we are playing against a very AP heavy team, then we will take MR blues because we need the defense and we will get 40% CDR from our build. For our Masteries, we play an 18-12-0 page. The biggest things to note are that we put all of our points in natural talent. While the AD is nice, the AP actually becomes very useful for our meditate. We obviously take Fervor because it's really easy to get stacks due to Master Yi's double strike passive. 12 points in the Cunning tree are pretty standard, but you can take 12 points in the Resolve tree for the lower summon and cooldowns. For our starting items, we almost always take a longsword with 3 pots. The whole point of the early game is to get Blade of the Ruined King as fast as possible, which is why we get a longsword, and 3 pots is plenty enough sustain to last you until you get lifesteal. If you do have a difficult matchup, Doran's Shield or Cloth Armor is also viable against these champions. If you do end up taking Doran's or Cloth, your goal is to just sit and farm, not to fight with the enemy. For summoner spells, you always want to run Ghost Flash, unless you are guaranteed to lose lane, in which case take TP Flash so you can back. Before when I played Yi, I struggled until I figured out what was going wrong. I didn't have enough movement speed. The reason why we take Ghost is that the current trend with new champions is that they are being released with increasing amounts of base movement speed or movement abilities. With the amount of buffs that champions can get from Storm Raiders and supports like Lulu, Master Yi can no longer reliably chase targets with his ult. This can be a huge problem because Master Yi must always be fast enough to dive and deal with Kite. Taking Ghost and items like Yumu's means that he will always have a movement speed buff that's not on cooldown. Just remember that movement speed is very important on Yi. Top lane Yi is built quite differently from jungle Yi. Instead of building attack speed, we build AD, CDR and defense stats for survivability and alpha strike damage. In a normal game, we will build Blade of the Ruined King, Black Cleaver, Yumu's and Deadman's Plate. Black Cleaver is actually very important because it gives us movement speed, armor shred, CDR and health. The slow on Deadman's Plate is actually very good on Yi because by the time the slow wears off, the enemy is already dead if they are a carry. Also, with all the movement speed, we will be able to proc the slow multiple times in one fight. Our final item should be Mercurial Scimitar most of the time, but you can choose a Lost Whisper item, Styrax or Titanic. We never build GA because the revive is useless. For the duration of the revive, we lose duration on our ult and E, and we become useless for the rest of the fight. Other defensive items are better on Yi to help him survive enough for the resets. If you are really ahead, get a Ginzu's Rage Blade. The damage from this item will melt anyone, but we usually don't get it because defensive stats are better. If you do take the MR rune page, then you will build Blade of the Ruined King, Black Cleaver, Maw of Malmortius, Spirit Visage and Mercurial Scimitar. These items are basically an instant win because with the amount of shields and MR you have, no AP champ can burst you down at all. Also, if you do end up low after a full combo, the lifesteal from Maw, Blade of the Ruined King and Merc Skim, and the enhancement of lifesteal from Spirit Visage means that in team fights or 1v1s, you can easily sustain yourself. Our build always gives 40% CDR. As I said before, this is important to maintain the duration of our ult. Boots are always Ninja Tabbies or Merc Treads if they have large amounts of CC. In terms of skill order, we max Q, then E, then W. But for the first 4 levels we have 3 main ways of leveling our skills. The way you level your skills can affect how you do for the entire game, so remember to choose carefully. If we are dominating, we take QE, and then if we need to, we take W. This is because we don't need a heal as our health pots easily keep us sustained, but leveling up our E earlier gives us more manaless true damage. This makes our auto attacks extremely lethal at level 4 and can get skills quickly. If we are losing lane or we bought cloth from 4 pots, we take QWEW. With this, we just want to sustain our way to a Vamp Scepter or better. This is normally combined with the cloth and 4 pots or Doran's Shield. Do not waste any mana trying to trade with Q. Save it all for your W. Finally, in any normal game we will just take QEWQ. This gives us all of the skills we need at the relevant time, and this way of skilling is what I do about 80% of the time. I rarely ever lose lane, so I don't need my meditate as much. During the early game, if you find your lane difficult, just sustain and farm under tower, but the golden rules are, never give away any kills, and do not play passive. You must establish lane dominance when you can. For any normal game, early game is completely about farming and dominating lane. Masteries kit allows him to win almost any lane as long as you prepare what you want to do in advance. In this clip, I show you the combo to trade. First, stack up your double strike passive, then alpha the enemy and press E mid-alpha. The double strike uses our true damage twice and gives us 4 further stacks. From here, if you think you will lose the trade, then walk into the brush to reset aggro, but Mastery easily wins extended trades as long as his E is up. Keep auto-attacking while walking with the enemy champ, and I can guarantee that half of the enemy's health will be gone. From here you can try another trade or just zone them and out-CS them. Your entire early game is to get enough gold for your Blade of the Ruin King and Brutes. This will give you the dueling power for the mid-game. Mid-game is completely about getting fed and applying pressure. You need to remember that it's all about getting a lead on the enemy so that you can win fights and close out the game quickly. You must be proactive and look for kills, because while Yi is a good champ, there comes a point where being behind or even being even means that Yi's impact on the game is small. Tanks start to get very tanky, carries get shields, heals and other buffs, and the CC becomes a nightmare for Yi. The time you spend in lane should be very small compared to the amount of time you spend roaming and teamfighting. Get your team to initiate fights, or look for carries out of position and dive in on them. The CC from your support and jungle should be plenty enough for you to set up kills to get you fed. Black Cleaver is your next power spike. The movement speed and armor shred means that no one else on the enemy team can fight you, so take advantage of this and either group with the team or split push. Your Highlander cooldown is also reduced, and anytime you have ult up you should be looking to fight. Split pushing on Yi should be done as much as possible as soon as you get a lead, because you can easily deal with one person trying to stop you, and 1v2s aren't that hard as long as you dodge the CC. If someone is in your lane trying to stop you, you should kill them, even if they're under tower. Firstly, don't use your ult too early. You want to walk up to the enemy and then use your ult. Bait out any CC, and if you see another enemy come close, wait for them to come as well. Try to alpha strike a tower shot, but first let the tower hit a few times. The way towers work is that the early shots do less damage than the later ones, so using alpha strikes resets the shots. Once you get max further stacks, they will melt and you can quickly escape tower range. Use this pressure to secure objectives. You can duel anyone on Yi as long as they can't burst you. You have the Blade of the Ruin King passive, your alpha strike and dodge skills, and your W gives you good healing and damage reduction, and with all of the movement speed, no one can escape you. Late game you want to group with your teammates and fight to end the game. You can also split push, but you have to trust your teammates to not die 4v5, and that's usually a bad idea. There are 2 ways to enter a team fight as Yi. Always let people waste their cooldowns on the tanks and wait for the right moment. In this clip, look just how long I hang around at the back, and look how far back I am. I wait out Nautilus's ult, I wait out basically everything. I know that Darius is going to kill my teammates, but I'm there to clean up, not to die. Galileo gets a 5-man taunt and then I join in. You can either A, dive the enemy carries if you can quickly kill them, which is what I do, or B, stack your fervor on the enemy tank and then dive. Your fervor gives you so much extra AD that carries will melt most of the time. You should be tanky enough that you either manage to get resets on your abilities and clean up the fight, or you buy time for your carries to do damage. The lifesteal from Blade of the Ruin King and Merc Skim is usually enough that if you play the fight well, you can sustain through any damage, and come out of the fight with almost full health. Remember to use your W to reduce damage and keep mashing Q. Meditate is the most underrated ability in Yi's kit, because it does so much. Don't spam your W in the early game on Yi, because he's a mana-hungry champion. Instead, if you aren't extremely low, use health pots instead. The way Yi's W works is that the more health you have missing, the better heal you get, so normally it's better to save your mana for later and use health pots. Also remember that your W gives you an insane amount of damage reduction, which you can use in fights to reduce damage from abilities and turret shots. It also gives you an auto attack reset, gives you double strike stats, and pauses the duration of your E and O, which means that if an enemy uses Zhonya's or GA, you can wait it out by meditating and then fighting again. The difference between a veteran Yi player and a beginner can be absolutely huge. Remember these ability tips. Remember that your auto attacks reduce the cooldown of your Q by 1 second, so when you are in a fight, if the enemy is not in range, auto attacking a minion or a turret gives you both cooldown on your Q and stacks your double passives. Spam your E in the early game. It is free true damage that makes Yi very strong in the early game. Before team fights, wait until you're on an enemy carry before using it. Yi is always about getting resets. Diving carries is important, but it is always much better to kill the enemy with the lowest HP, because it gives you a longer ult and resets your abilities. This is how people chain alpha strikes together, and even after team fights end up with 30 seconds extra of Highlander duration. Remember to use double strike when trading in the early game. The double proc works on Fervor, Blade of the Ruin King or E, and reduces your alpha strike cooldown twice. That's pretty much it guys, thank you for watching this video, I hope it helps. If you have any suggestions, whether it's a different build or something about the video, please leave it in the comments. Thank you.